We don't need our husband's money for survival. We've our business.
We're the baddie mums. We make our own money.
Every woman, every mother, every girl needs to hear this, because what you're about to hear might change how you see marriage, money, and happiness forever. As a woman, you can have money and still feel empty. You can be strong and still feel alone. You can be in control of your life and still be losing something important. And most women don't realize it until it's too late. This is the story of 3 women. Women everybody admired. Women every girl wanted to become. Women who had everything under control. They were called the baddie mums. 3 wives, 3 mothers, 3 successful women. They had their own money, their own power, their own lives. They didn't beg, they didn't depend, they didn't shrink themselves for any man. And the truth about their life, nobody saw it until it started to show.
This is a circle of African tales where African wisdom lives, and every story has a lesson.
That morning in Lekki started like every other morning, busy, loud, and slightly rushed. Cars lined up at the entrance of the private school, drivers opening doors, nannies adjusting uniforms, children dragging their feet or running ahead with excitement. Then one black SUV pulled in. Heads turned. Not because it was the most expensive car there, but because of who stepped out of it. Mrs. Jane Okonkwo. Her heels touched the ground with quiet confidence. Long braided hair flowing neatly down her back, oversized sunglasses, a fitted outfit that looked simple at first glance, but anyone who knew fashion knew it wasn't cheap. She didn't rush, she didn't look around, she moved like someone who knew exactly who she was. From the second car behind her stepped out Mrs. Samantha Adeyemi. Samantha was brighter, louder in presence. Her braids were styled into a high, bold look, her dress full of color, her energy alive even at that early hour. She laughed at something her driver said, adjusting her handbag as she called out to her son. Then the third, Mrs. Caroline Bassi. Soft, composed, almost quiet, but not weak. Her beauty didn't beg for attention, it held it. Her braids were neatly packed, her outfit clean and structured. She held her daughter's hand for a moment before letting go, bending slightly to say something that made the little girl smile. 3 different women, one presence. People noticed. They always did. From the side, 2 mothers standing near the gate lowered their voices. That's them. Those baddie mums. A small laugh. They don't send anybody. And they don't need to. The 3 women didn't react. Maybe they didn't hear. Or maybe they were used to it. Because in that school, everyone knew them. Not just for how they looked, but for how they lived. Jane adjusted her glasses slightly as she watched her son walk into the school building. Samantha waved dramatically at hers. Caroline gave a small nod, her eyes following her daughter until she disappeared inside. Then, almost without saying it, the 3 women drifted toward each other. Natural, effortless, like it had been happening for years. Coffee, Samantha said, already turning. Jane smirked. You're the one that needs it. You didn't sleep. I slept, Samantha replied quickly. I just didn't rest. Caroline shook her head slightly, smiling. That's not the same thing. They walked out together, heels clicking in quiet rhythm, heading toward the cafe just down the road, a place they had turned into their usual morning spot. Inside, the air was calm, cool, controlled. They took their usual table without asking. The waiter already knew their order. That was the kind of life they lived. Jane placed her phone on the table, glancing at a message. Shipment just landed this morning, Brazil. Samantha raised an eyebrow. Again? You're trying to own Lagos hair market, Abi? Jane smiled slightly. Not trying. Caroline leaned back. You already do. They laughed softly. No noise, no stress. Just women who were used to winning. Samantha crossed her legs. My new collection drops next week. If this one doesn't sell out in 2 days, I'll be very disappointed. It will sell out, Caroline said simply. Jane nodded. Your customers don't even think before they buy. That's because I don't give them time to think, Samantha replied with a small grin. Again, laughter. Then Caroline added quietly, New branch opens this weekend. Jane turned. Already? Victoria Island, Caroline said, soft opening. Samantha tapped the table. We're going, no excuses. Obviously, Jane replied. For a moment, there was silence. Not awkward, just steady. Then Samantha leaned forward slightly. Did you see that message? Jane didn't look up. Which one? About your husband. Jane picked up her coffee calmly, took a sip. I saw it. And? Samantha asked. Jane placed the cup down. And what? Samantha blinked. You don't want to react? Jane looked at her. Not angry, not hurt, just clear. React to what? A man behaving like a man? Caroline let out a quiet breath, almost amused. Samantha shook her head slightly. You are too calm. Jane shrugged slightly. I have money, I have peace, I have control. What exactly am I fighting for? That line sat on the table, heavy, real. Caroline added softly, if you start chasing everything men do, you'll lose yourself. Samantha leaned back, thinking. Jane continued, her voice even, steady. We didn't build this life to start stressing over things we already understand. Caroline nodded slowly. We agreed from the beginning. And just like that, the memory came back. University days, 3 girls, no money, no connections, but one promise. No man will reduce us. They had said it like a joke back then, but they meant it. They had carried that mindset into their lives, into their marriages, into everything. Samantha exhaled, a small smile returning. Honestly, I don't even have the energy anymore. Jane smirked. Exactly. Caroline added quietly, focus on what gives you peace. And for them, peace looked like control, money, freedom, choice. Outside, the sun had risen higher. Inside, their world remained steady. Until the door opened. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to shift something. A woman stepped in. Simple clothes, no makeup, braids that had started to lose their neatness. She paused for a second, scanning the room. Then her eyes landed on them. Not boldly, not confidently, but carefully, like someone watching from the outside. This was not her world, you could tell. She hesitated before walking to a corner seat, quiet, invisible, but her eyes kept moving back to them. Jane noticed first. She didn't say anything immediately, just observed. Samantha followed her gaze. Who's that? Caroline glanced briefly. I've seen her at the school. Jane tilted her head slightly. The woman sat stiffly, her hands wrapped around an empty cup. There was something about her, not just how she looked, but how she felt, like someone carrying too much. Then, suddenly, the door opened again. A school staff member stepped in, slightly out of breath. Excuse me. Her eyes scanned the room, then stopped on that woman. Madam, we've been trying to reach you. It's your son. His fees haven't been cleared. The school said he cannot stay today. Silence. The kind that makes people look away, but not them. Jane, Samantha, and Caroline watched closely. The woman's face tightened. Embarrassment, pain, helplessness, all at once. I will come, she said quietly. She picked up her bag quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. But for a brief second, her eyes met Jane's. And in that moment, everything was clear. This was not just a woman. This was someone drowning quietly. The door closed behind her. Samantha exhaled slowly. Caroline looked down at the table. Jane didn't speak immediately. Her eyes stayed on the door a second longer. Then she said quietly, She's been watching us. Samantha turned. You noticed? Jane nodded once. Caroline leaned back slightly. Now we've noticed her. And just like that, something had shifted. Because sometimes, the moment you notice someone's struggle is the moment your story begins to change.
The next time they saw her, it wasn't at the school gate. It was at Caroline's restaurant. Late afternoon, the kind of hour when the place was calm but still alive. Soft music in the background, quiet conversations, waiters moving with practiced ease. Everything inside that space reflected Caroline. Clean, intentional, controlled. Caroline stood near the counter speaking to one of her staff when she noticed her. The same woman from the cafe. She stood just by the entrance, unsure whether to step in or turn back. Her eyes moved around the room slowly, like someone who didn't feel like they belonged in places like this. Caroline watched her for a few seconds. Then she said gently, You can come in. The woman hesitated, then walked forward. Good afternoon, she said, her voice low. Caroline nodded. Sit. She didn't ask questions immediately. She signaled for a drink to be brought. A few minutes later, Jane and Samantha walked in together, mid-conversation. I told him, if you don't like it, you can rest. Samantha stopped when she saw her. Jane followed her gaze. Recognition. That's her, Samantha said quietly. Caroline nodded once.
The woman sat straighter, clearly uncomfortable now that all three of them were present. Jane pulled out a chair and sat. Samantha dropped her bag on the table. Caroline joined them. Silence for a moment, not hostile, just waiting. Then Jane spoke. "What's your name?" The woman swallowed slightly. "Grace." Samantha leaned forward. "Grace, we saw you at the cafe." Grace nodded quickly. "Yes, I'm sorry if..." "You don't need to apologize," Caroline cut in softly. Another pause. Jane studied her face. "You've been watching us." Grace froze. There was no point denying it. Her shoulders dropped slightly. "Yes." Samantha tilted her head. "Why?" That question sat there, simple but heavy. Grace looked down at her hands for a second, then back up. "Because I want that life. No drama, no long speech, just truth." Something about the way she said it made the air shift. Jane didn't look surprised. Caroline didn't either. Samantha leaned back slowly. "What life exactly?" she asked. Grace hesitated. Then she said it carefully. "You look free." That word hung there. Free. Jane tapped her finger lightly on the table. "Free from what?" Grace let out a small breath. "From asking for money." Silence. "My husband controls everything," she continued, her voice tightening slightly. "What I eat, what I buy, even what I give my children. If I need something, I have to explain it, justify it." She paused. "I don't even feel like an adult in my own house." Samantha's expression changed slightly. Caroline's eyes softened. Jane stayed still. Grace continued, now faster, like the words had been waiting. "I don't have anything of my own, no income, no control. I just manage the house, take care of the kids, and still, it's not enough." Her voice dropped. "That day at the school, I didn't even know the fees hadn't been paid." That line hit differently. Not loud, but deep. Samantha looked away briefly. Caroline folded her hands together. Jane leaned forward slightly. "And you think being like us will fix that?" Grace met her eyes. "I don't know, but I know I can't keep living like this." Silence again. But this one felt different, heavier. The three women exchanged a quick glance, not obvious, but understood. Samantha was the first to speak. "If we help you, you won't like everything." Grace didn't hesitate. "I'm ready." Caroline added, "It's not just about money." Jane finished. "It's about how you think." Grace nodded. "I'm ready." Jane held her gaze for a second longer. Then she sat back. "Okay." That one word changed everything. Samantha clapped her hands lightly once. "Good. Then we start now." Grace blinked. "Now?" Caroline smiled slightly. "There's no later." And just like that, it began. The first thing they broke was not her situation. It was her thinking. "You talk like someone waiting," Jane told her one morning. They were seated in a quiet corner of the restaurant before opening hours. "Waiting for what?" Grace asked. "For permission," Jane replied. Grace went quiet. Samantha leaned forward. "Nobody is coming to approve your life." Caroline added softly. "If you don't take control, someone else will keep controlling it." Grace nodded slowly. You could see it. The shift wasn't instant, but it had started. Next came appearance, not because looks were everything, but because presence mattered. Samantha stood in front of her one afternoon, adjusting her outfit. "You hide too much," she said. Grace looked down at herself. "I'm just being simple." "No," Samantha corrected. "You are being invisible." That word hit. Invisible. Samantha stepped back. "Stand properly." Grace straightened slightly. "Look at me," Samantha said. Grace did. "Again," Samantha added, "without fear." It took a few tries, but something changed. Small, but real. Then the question that changed direction came. "What can you do?" Caroline asked her one evening. Grace hesitated. "I don't know." Jane shook her head. "Everybody can do something." Grace thought. Then slowly. "I used to plan events, small ones, birthdays, church programs." Samantha's eyes lit up. "Used to?" Grace shrugged slightly. "It never became anything serious." Jane leaned forward. "Why?" Grace knew the truth because she had stopped herself. Caroline smiled faintly. Good, that's your starting point. Grace blinked. Starting point? Jane nodded. You don't need to learn everything. You need to use what you already have. Samantha snapped her fingers. Exactly. Grace looked between them. You mean start again? Jane shook her head. Not again. A pause. For real this time. The first job came faster than she expected. Small event, low budget, but she took it. She almost overprepared, almost doubted herself, but she did it. And it worked. Not perfect, but good. The second job came easier, then another, then referrals, then money. Real money. The first time she held cash she had earned herself. She didn't spend it immediately. She just sat with it, quietly, feeling it, like it meant something more than just money. If you're enjoying this story, quickly subscribe. Let's continue. Weeks passed, then months. The change was no longer small. It was visible. Grace's clothes changed. Her posture changed. Her voice changed. She spoke with more certainty now. She laughed more. She moved differently. Even at the school gate, people started noticing her, not as the struggling woman, but as someone becoming something else. One morning, she walked into the cafe. Not hesitating this time, not looking around nervously. She walked straight to their table. Samantha looked up first, paused, then smiled slowly. Okay. Jane glanced up, then nodded once. Caroline's lips curved slightly. Grace sat down, comfortably. No tension, no fear, just presence. Samantha leaned back. See yourself. Grace laughed, not awkward, not forced, real. Jane picked up her puffy. How many events this week? 3, Grace replied. Caroline raised an eyebrow. And you said you didn't know what you could do. Grace smiled. I didn't know I could do it like this. Samantha pointed at her. That's the difference. Jane added calmly. You didn't change your life. Grace looked at her. Jane continued. You just stopped shrinking it. Silence. But this time, it felt full. Outside, the world was still the same. But inside that space, Grace was no longer the woman who sat in the corner, watching, wishing. Now she was at the table, present, growing, becoming. And as they laughed together, for the first time, she didn't feel like she was trying to belong. She already did. By the time Grace fully stepped into their circle, everything about her life had changed. But what she didn't expect was that stepping closer would also mean seeing more. Not the polished version people admired from outside, the real version. The first time she noticed it was at Jane's house. It wasn't planned. Jane had invited her over quickly after a supplier meeting. Just come, she said. I won't be long. Jane's house was exactly what you would expect. Clean lines, soft lighting, everything in place. The kind of space that looked like control lived there. Grace sat in the living room, taking it in quietly. Then she heard a voice. Madam, he doesn't want to eat. Grace turned. A nanny stood near the staircase holding a plate. Jane didn't even look up immediately. She was on her phone. Leave it there, she said. He said he doesn't want it, the nanny repeated. Jane exhaled, slightly irritated now. Then leave it, he'll eat when he's hungry. Grace's eyes shifted slightly. Moments later, a small boy came down the stairs. Jane's son. He walked past his mother without stopping. No greeting, no eye contact, just straight to the nanny. Auntie, I want biscuits. The nanny smiled softly. Okay. Jane finally looked up. Come here, she said. The boy paused, just for a second. Then he shook his head slightly. I'm okay, and walked away. That moment was small, but it stayed. Jane didn't react. She simply went back to her phone, like it didn't matter, like it was normal. Grace sat there quietly, watching, understanding something she couldn't yet explain. Another day, she found herself at Samantha's place. This one was louder, more color, more energy, music playing somewhere in the background. Samantha was getting ready for something, moving around her room, picking outfits, talking at the same time. Men will stress you if you let them, she was saying, half laughing. Grace smiled, sitting on the edge of the bed. Then a male voice cut in, sharp, from the doorway. So you are still going out? Samantha didn't turn immediately. Yes. The man stepped in, tall, well-dressed, but his presence felt different, not calm, not respectful. Of course, he said, you're always going out. Grace went still. Samantha finally turned, unfazed. And? The man laughed slightly, not a kind laugh. Nothing, just don't pretend you are doing all this for the family. Silence. Grace looked between them, waiting. Samantha picked up her bag. I don't pretend anything, she said, her voice flat. The man shook his head. You think money makes you something. Samantha walked past him. Think whatever you like. And that was it. No argument, no fight, just dismissal. Grace followed her out slowly, but something didn't sit right. Not the words, but how easily Samantha ignored them, like she had trained herself not to feel it. Caroline's house was different, quiet, too quiet. Grace noticed it immediately. No music, no raised voices, no movement. Everything looked perfect, but it felt still. Caroline walked in calmly, placing her bag down. Sit, she said. Grace sat. A few minutes later, a man walked in, Caroline's husband. He nodded once. You are back? Yes, Caroline replied. No smile, no warmth, just acknowledgement. He sat down, turned on the TV. That was it. They stayed in the same room, but not together. Grace watched them, waiting for something more. A conversation, a connection, anything. Nothing came. Caroline stood up after a while. I have something to finish upstairs, she said. The man didn't respond. Grace followed her quietly. Halfway up the stairs, she glanced back. He hadn't moved, still watching TV, alone. That night, Grace sat in her own space thinking, not about her old life, but about this new one, the one she had wanted so badly, the one she had walked to enter. Everything still looked beautiful, still looked powerful, still looked right. But now, she had seen behind it. And what she saw wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was subtle but real. Something was missing in all three homes. Different forms, same feeling. A few days later, they all met at a rooftop lounge. The city lights stretched wide below them. Music played softly, glasses clinked, laughter filled the air. It was one of those nights that looked perfect from the outside. They were dressed beautifully, head done, confidence glowing. People noticed them as always. Baddie mums, someone whispered nearby. Samantha smiled, raising her glass. To growth. Jane tapped her glass lightly against hers. Caroline nodded. Grace joined them. They drank, they laughed, they talked about work, money, new deals. Everything felt normal again, easy. Until Grace spoke. It wasn't planned, it just came. Soft but clear. Can I ask something? Jane glanced at her. You just did, a small smile. Grace looked at them one by one, then she said it. Are we actually happy or just in control? Silence. Instant. Heavy. Samantha's smile faded slightly. Jane's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Caroline looked down. Grace didn't take it back. She didn't soften it. She just sat there, waiting. Samantha was the first to react. What kind of question is that? She said, forcing a light tone. Grace didn't answer immediately. Jane spoke next. We are fine, she said, not defensive, but firm. Samantha nodded quickly. Exactly. But Caroline didn't speak. Grace noticed, and that was enough. Jane leaned forward slightly. You are overthinking. Grace shook her head slowly. I don't think I am. Samantha laughed, but it didn't land the same way. See, this is why people stay broke. Too much emotion. Grace looked at her, then at Jane, then at Caroline. I just asked a question. Another silence, but this one felt different. Not comfortable, not easy. Something had shifted. Samantha picked up her drink again. Jane leant back. Caroline finally spoke softly. It's not a bad question. Samantha turned. Please, don't start. Caroline didn't respond. Grace watched them carefully, because now she could see it clearly. The strength, the success, the independence, all real. But underneath it, something else existed, something they didn't talk about, something they had learned to ignore. The music continued. People laughed. The city light still shone. But at that table, the balance had changed. And for the first time, being a baddie mom didn't feel as simple as it once did. The call came in the middle of the day. Not dramatic, not loud. Just one of those calls people don't expect, but immediately feel. Grace was the first to see the message in their group chat. School called. It's serious. Caroline. No emojis, no explanation. Just that. Within minutes, everything shifted. The school compound didn't feel the same that afternoon. The same gate, the same buildings, the same uniforms. but the air was different, tight, uneasy. Grace arrived first, then Samantha, then Jane. Caroline came last. No one spoke much as they walked into the admin office. The principal sat behind her desk, calm but not relaxed. "This is not something we take lightly," she said. Then she looked at Jane. "Your son." Jane's expression didn't change. "What about him?" The principal paused slightly. "He got into a fight." Samantha crossed her arms. "Children fight." The principal shook her head. This was not just a fight. She turned the file around. There were words, things he said that are concerning. Jane picked up the paper, read it, and for the first time, her face shifted, just slightly. "What is this?" she asked quietly. The principal didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pressed a button. "Send him in." A few seconds later, the door opened. Jane's son walked in, but not like the boy Grace had seen before. Not quiet, not distant. This time, there was something else. Anger. Not loud, but deep. "Sit," the principal said. He sat. Didn't look at anyone. Jane's voice was calm. "What happened?" No answer. The principal stepped in. He told another child that mothers who don't stay at home don't care about their children. Silence. Heavy. Jane blinked once, then again, like she was trying to process it. "He also said," the principal continued, "that money is more important than family because that's what he sees." That line landed hard. Grace felt it in her chest. Samantha shifted slightly. Caroline looked down. Jane turned slowly to her son. "Is that what you said?" The boy didn't look at her. "Yes." Simple. Clear. No fear. Jane inhaled slowly. "And why would you say that?" This time, he looked up, and what he said next didn't sound like a child repeating words. It sounded like something he had been carrying. "Because you are never there." Silence. Complete. Even the air felt still. "You're always walking," he continued. "Even when you're home, you're not really there." Jane didn't move, didn't speak. He added quietly, "Auntie is the one that takes care of me." That was it. No shouting, no crying, just truth. And somehow, that made it worse. No one spoke on the way out. Not Jane, not Samantha, not Caroline, not Grace. They walked out of the school like people who had just seen something they couldn't unsee. That evening, they met again, not at the cafe, not at the rooftop, somewhere quieter. No music, no distraction, just space. Jane sat first, still. Samantha stood by the window. Caroline sat beside Grace. No one rushed to speak, because what needed to be said was not easy. Jane broke the silence. "I provide for him." Her voice was calm, but there was something under it, something fragile. "I make sure he has everything." No one argued, because it was true. Samantha nodded slightly. "You do." Jane continued, almost like she was convincing herself. "I didn't struggle to become this just to sit at home." Grace watched her, carefully. Caroline said nothing. Samantha turned. "You're not wrong," she said, but she stopped. Didn't finish, because even she knew there was more. Caroline finally spoke, soft, measured. "I think we replaced something." All eyes turned to her. She continued, "We replaced presence with provision." Silence. Jane looked away. Samantha frowned slightly. Grace felt it, that quiet truth again, the one nobody wanted to say out loud. Samantha shook her head lightly. "So what now? We drop everything?" Her tone wasn't angry, but it was defensive. "We've built too much to start questioning it now." Jane nodded slightly. "Exactly." Caroline didn't respond. She just looked at them, then at Grace. And that was when Grace spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally, just honestly. "I wanted your life." They all looked at her. She didn't look away. "I used to watch you and think, this is it. This is what freedom looks like." She paused, then added, "And it is." Jane's expression softened slightly, but Grace continued, "But now I see something else too." Silence. "I see the cost." That word again, cost. No one interrupted her. "I was struggling before," Grace said. "I had nothing, no control, no money." She looked down briefly. "Now I have something. I can stand. I can decide." She looked back up. "But I don't want to lose something else while gaining that." That landed differently, because it wasn't judgment, it was clarity. Samantha sat down slowly. Caroline leaned back. Jane stayed still. No one rushed to defend themselves, because deep down, they understood. Jane spoke again, quieter this time. "I didn't know he felt like that." No one said you should have known. No one blamed her, because this wasn't about blame. It was about realization. Caroline added softly, Maybe it's not about choosing one over the other. They looked at her. She continued. Maybe it's about not losing one while chasing the other. That sat well. Not perfect, but honest. Samantha exhaled slowly. This life we chose, it gave us strength. Jane nodded. Caroline added, but strength should not create distance. Grace watched them because this was the real moment. Not the money, not the success, but this, where everything had to be rethought. Outside, the world was still moving. People were still admiring them, still calling them baddie moms, still wishing for their lives. But inside that room, they had seen something deeper, something quieter, something real. Nothing was destroyed. They didn't lose their businesses. They didn't lose their power. They didn't suddenly become different people. But something changed inside because now they knew independence is powerful. But if you are not careful, it can slowly replace connection. And the truth is, not every success is complete. Not every freedom is balanced. So now let me ask you, is it better to have full control over your life but slowly lose connection with the people that matter? Or is it better to hold on to connection even if it means sacrificing some level of independence? Can a woman truly have both without losing something? Or is there always a price we just don't see at the beginning? Think about it, because this story is not far from real life.
And that night, something changed. Not their money, not their businesses, not their beauty, but their awareness. Because for the first time, they were no longer just looking at their lives from the outside. They were feeling it from the inside. And the truth is, there is nothing wrong with a woman wanting more. Nothing wrong with a woman building her own money. Nothing wrong with a woman refusing to suffer in silence. Nothing wrong with choosing peace over pressure. To every girl, every daughter, every wife, every mother watching this, you are allowed to grow, you are allowed to shine, you are allowed to have your own. You don't have to disappear inside marriage. You don't have to beg to live your life. You don't have to shrink just to be accepted. Build yourself, stand strong, know your worth. But as you rise, don't lose yourself in another way. Because life is not only about control, it is also about connection. It is about presence. It is about the small moments that nobody claps for. It is about the people who don't need your money, but need you. Because at the end of the day, money can build a house, but it cannot replace a mother's presence. Success can give you freedom, but it should not create distance. Power can protect you, but it should not harden your heart. And that is the balance many people don't talk about. The baddie moms were not wrong, but they were not completely right either. Because real life is not black and white. It is choices and consequences, gain and sacrifice. And sometimes the things we ignore today become the things we wish we paid attention to tomorrow. So now let me ask you, can a woman truly have full independence and still maintain a deeply connected home? Is emotional peace more important than financial control? Were the baddie moms right, or did they ignore something important? Is it possible to build a powerful life without slowly losing emotional closeness? At what point does being strong turn into being unavailable? If you had to choose, would you choose full independence or full connection? Or do you believe a woman can truly balance both without losing anything? Let's talk.
Every story carries a lesson, and if this one touched you in any way, let it guide your heart and inspire your journey. I hope you enjoyed this African folktale. If you did, please subscribe to this channel for more amazing, life-changing stories. Don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment. And if you want more, the next story is already waiting for you on your screen. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. See you in the next video.